Oh, yeah.
We're going to do parenting porcupines tonight. We don't have Melissa with us, and you need to get to the gym. So it's going to be, a little bit of a different show. Also, it's Easter week, and we're going to be talking about Jesus being the OG Libertarian. Welcome to Parenting Porcupines. Here we go. I'm glad to be back on the air with you, Jessica. And usually we spend like 30 minutes before we get on the show just chit-chatting, but I was like, I need to eat some dinner first. And then usually we spend like 30 minutes after the show chit-chatting, and you're running to the gym at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, because it's the only time I have for me. So I like to, I've got a specific treadmill that I like because it's right in front of the TV that has ESPN. And so I get to watch the baseball games or the basketball games or whatever is on ESPN, and it's awesome. So,
and you figured it out that that's the time and the place to be.
Yeah,
I got you. I went for my run this morning, so I'm all caught up on that. And then we were on the radio this afternoon on makethepointradio.com, myself and Kasie Crow, talking libertarian politics. Ask a Libertarian is what we've been doing on the radio this week, which has been fun. People calling in and being like, what do libertarians think about this? And it's like, okay, let's riff on that for a few minutes. So that's been fun too. But because I was doing that for 2 hours this afternoon, I came home, I walked in the door. It's a little bit like back in the day when I used to teach all day, and I would come in and my husband, Charlie, would walk in, he'd start talking to me, and I'd be like, I have nothing to say.
I need a minute.
I've been talking all day. I have nothing to say.
I need a minute.
And it was that way when I got home from the radio show today. I was just like, I'm just worn out. I'm just exhausted. So I spent a little time like regrouping and pulling it back together. And now I'm super excited to talk about the topic for tonight, which is our special Easter topic. Jesus is the original OG gangsta libertarian. The OG libertarian. Holy cow. So until we went on the air, I didn't even know what OG was. I was like, oh, that's like some weird internet slang. So
it is weird internet slang the kids are using these days. We got to be hip.
Let's talk about this. All right. So first and foremost, you bring us into it because you, in our show notes out on the blog, parentingporcupines.com, there's some conversations around politics, religion, football. So bring us in.
Yeah. So growing up in the South, and I know you grew up in Virginia, which is technically considered the South. Yeah. It's not really the South, let's be honest.
Certainly not Northern Virginia, which is like a whole other animal than actual Virginia.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well just live in New York. But
what?
I'm just kidding. No,
that's 100% true. Totally true.
So, growing up in the South, in the time that we grew up, because we grew up before everybody was so connected by the internet, we always grew up being told it's tacky to talk about three things in mixed company. And those three things were politics, religion, and football. You just didn't talk about those three things in mixed company. Generally, because
politics and religion, but the football thing is new for me. And maybe that's because we weren't hanging out with a whole lot of opposing team fans. We were always hanging out with our same fans. Right?
No, I've heard stories of like things being thrown across tables over football rivalries. So it's legit here in the South, college football especially. But anyway, the more connected we become via social media, I think the less taboo there is around these topics. And so people are talking about them more and more. And I think what's very interesting is that those topics, maybe not necessarily the football topic, but the politics topic is starting to be more integrated into a lot of church conversations, like within churches. I know within my church, we have a lot of conversations around political topics, and mainly because these topics, these things that are going on require community action, right? And so growing up, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. It was very fire and brimstone, like if you drank beer, you were going to hell kind of thing. And the church that we go to now is a lot more progressive, and it's a lot more of a love-based, mission-oriented congregation and gospel. Like, that's what our pastors talk about. They talk about, being that example, because anybody who's watching this who is, a Christian, they understand that, the goal is to live in the image of Christ, right? To be the body of Christ, to live in that, live that example of who he was and the things that he did. And so that's more of what our pastors talk about. And so we do a lot of mission work in the community. We do a lot of work with the homeless. We try to partner with organizations that do outreach to underprivileged children so that we can work to give those children opportunities to get involved in the community and things like that. So very mission-based.
Well, hang on, because I want to go back just a second, because you talked about the religion and politics kind of melding together.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's accidental.
No,
I think
it's definitely not.
If we go back to like Newt Gingrich and the Contract for America,
Mm-hmm.
and the way the Republican Party brought the Christian coalition
Absolutely.
into politics, and they created this kind of Republican brand that was Christians are Republican, and you can feel, Democrats chafing against that. Like, well, now wait a second, how did they bring all the Christians into their party?
Right.
But Christianity is not a political party. It's a philosophy, it's a faith, and it's a community, and that community is not political. And even though it's being sort of weaponized that way, it's not meant to be that way.
Yeah. Well, our young adults, our Bible study class, it's like all people our age, in this weird stage where we're parenting children and, still trying to figure out who we want to be when we grow up, I guess. But we're doing this study of this book. It's called The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And I put a link to it in the show notes. It's written by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know how to say his last name, but it's in the show notes. But it's a very interesting book, and it was written, I think, to kind of give some insight into the beliefs of each of these like political party people. But the reason that we started doing this study is because one of the guys that is in our class had read it, and he did a book review. And in his book review, because our church also has a little book club, and so in his review of the book, he had said that it was very insightful for him because he also grew up in a very strict, Southern Baptist type environment. And he said it was very helpful for him. It gave him a lot of insight and guidance into how to talk to some of those people who are so closed to other ideas, to those progressive ideas, which I never thought we would get to a point that loving your neighbor was considered progressive, but here we are. So anyway, when they gave us this book, I was like, this is interesting, and of course everybody was very excited to hear my opinion of it. But I haven't gotten that far. I haven't really gotten that far into it yet. But admittedly, I did skip ahead because it does cover, so it covers the, Democrat, and then it covers the Republican or conservative, those points of view. And then it actually addresses libertarians, which I thought was very cool because oftentimes we're left out of the conversation completely. People don't talk about us. They really don't.
But you think it's cool because we're there. But then what did it say about us while you were there?
So I didn't dig all the way into it. I just kind of skimmed over it because I was like, if this is not accurate, I'm not even going to bother with this book. Like, if they didn't even take the time, I'm not going to take the time, So anyway, I thought they did a really good job. I don't know. I didn't quite figure out what research they did or where they did it. I think it's all in the book. And again, I have not completely gotten to the depth of it.
Well, and this isn't a book review anyway. So
it's not. No, it's not. Yeah. But I was a little disappointed in the fact that the main concept of libertarianism, I mean, the cornerstone of libertarianism doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere in that, which, for those of you who don't know, is the non-aggression principle, which is the rejection of force to achieve social or political goals. So basically, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff, right?
Right.
The other core principle of libertarianism is free will, right? And those two things are not included. And I thought it was very interesting, but, did do a good job of talking about how much we hate authority. I thought that was pretty accurate.
Which seems to be sort of everybody's understanding. So I was saying before we were on the radio this afternoon, and we're sitting in, it's me and Kasie Crow, who is the state chair here in South Carolina. And he and I are sitting in for Kevin Cohen, who runs the radio show himself. He runs the station, and it's his afternoon drive audience. And it's a relatively conservative audience. Now, Kevin himself is not one party or the other. He doesn't espouse any specific one or the other. It's like on a by issue basis, but it's on a conservative talk network. Like Dave Ramsey is on this network, and some of the other like traditional Fox voices are on this network. So it's pretty much conservative talk radio. And as we kind of came in with this like ask a libertarian approach, some of the calls that we've gotten have been about that kind of like, well, but the problem with libertarians is ... And one of those problems is this, I think, a Jesus conundrum, right? Like the problem that people seem to have with libertarians is that because we espouse individual rights, we don't care about the collective, that we're not invested in the community, that we're not interested in other people's success, because
which
we
couldn't
just think
be further
like
from the truth.
right. And we are like, to me, and you said this before, like we come at this from a place of love. It's because I love you that I trust you to make the right decisions for yourself and your family. And it's because I love you that I know that I'm not the right person to make those choices for you. Like that to me is the core of libertarianism. And man, do people have it wrong when they think it's that we just don't care?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have some questions coming through the YouTube channel. First question, how did Jesus hate authority? Well, certainly Jesus challenged authority.
Yeah, he definitely challenged authority.
Yeah, and he challenged this concept of certainty that was being espoused by the Jewish priests at the time, right? The rabbis, and he challenged the patriarchy and the assertion that women didn't have a place or a role other than subservient to men.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Y'all wouldn't know he rose if it wasn't for a woman. Just gonna say
there were quite a few things you wouldn't know about Jesus if it wasn't for a woman. He made good use of his network, and a number of those people in his network were women. And then the second question we got was, how is Jesus a libertarian?
We're going to get there.
I haven't posted the show notes yet. We're
getting there. So. Y'all settle down. Y'all calm down.
Relax.
But I will say, the first question, the Jesus hating authority, and you said he challenged authority. I think another example of that was in the temple, when the tax collectors were trying to collect taxes in the temple, and Jesus started flipping tables, which was, out of character, or the character that we think Jesus was, because Jesus was not, he was a pacifist, right? But I think that the challenge of authority, not to get too religious, but I think Jesus's challenging authority was a lot more to do with the spirituality piece of it. But the way that Jesus lived, however, I think there are a lot of libertarian principles within the way he lived and the way he loved. So, which I think we're going to get to.
And there's a sense of community in the way that he lived and the way that he preached, and the respect that he showed for the people who were around him and the way he listened to the people around him. That the humility that we hear about over and over and over again, a lot of that is in recognition of another person's authority, right? So not in terms of authority over others, but authority over themselves, right? I don't know that libertarians hate authority. I think libertarians hate authoritarianism, which is this belief that a single authority knows best for everybody. And I don't think that's what we believe. I think that we think of individuals as having authority over themselves and also having responsibility for themselves because of that authority they possess over themselves. And I also think like we, as parents, we have authority over our children. And we're meant to be good stewards of that authority. As community leaders, we have authority over our community, but we're meant to be good stewards of that authority. So I don't think libertarians hate authority. I think we worry about a single source of authoritarianism that believes that, say, the federal government or the president or a certain ruling party knows what's best for everybody. And I certainly don't think that was Jesus's perspective or ours as libertarians. All right, how do we get there? So in the unposted show notes, the teachings of Christ, the Word of God, and the libertarian principles. Number 1, go for it, Jessica.
Well, first, God's love is not contingent upon compliance. Right? God's love is unconditional. It's given freely, and we were given free will to choose whether we wanted to accept that love and accept that grace and walk with him if you believe in God. And if you don't, you're probably not very invested in this conversation, and that's okay. Just throwing that out there. You don't need to be nasty in the comments if you were thinking about doing that, because I know this gets really heated sometimes. But I think that free will piece, that's like the ultimate example of free will, right? If you believe in God and you believe that God created us in his image and God gave us this free will to choose how we live our lives. I mean, think about it. I mean, he's looking at us and he's looking at some of y'all like,
So before we go down the path of judgment and judge lest we be judged, which no libertarian wants to have that conversation.
No, I'm just saying though, it's probably
no, but
true.
You're right. I think the key
I'm not
to
saying
this
any names.
is the given freely, right? Love and forgiveness given freely, and this sense of abundance. I think of libertarians, and this is like small L libertarians, as recognizing that we have an abundance, right? There is plenty of room for everybody. There's plenty of room to have your beliefs, your faiths, your approach to life, your weird little peacock feathers that come up behind you as you go prancing down the street. Like, to me, libertarians are like, there's room for everybody here. And that abundance mentality of like, anybody and everybody is welcome. Bring your freak flag and fly it freely because everybody is welcome here. To me, that abundance mentality is very much based out of this God loves wastefully, right? Yeah. God loves freely and wastefully, and you don't have to earn that in the same way that I think we don't have to earn the right to be ourselves, to express ourselves, to use our voices, to share in experiences together. And so, like, to me, that abundance piece is very much a Jesus teaching and very much a libertarian principle.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Definitely.
I worry when one of the things we talked about on the radio was this concept of competition and the existing political parties wanting to seize control or seize power. One of the things that challenges me in being part of a libertarian or part of any kind of party, right? Any kind of political party, is this sort of preoccupation with control and with power. And something that Kasie Crow said that really stuck with me was, I don't care who gets credit for legalizing marijuana. I just want it legalized. Yeah. I don't care who gets credit for repealing these bad laws. Yeah. I just want them repealed. Right? Like, it's not about me being out there and being somebody's savior, being somebody's knight, or amassing power. It's an abundance mentality of like, there's room for everybody here. Let's just do the right thing and let's do it together.
Yeah. And that free will piece too, let people choose how they're going to live their lives, right? Because if God can do that, and he made us, like, he loves us because we're his children. If he can do that, why can't we do that? Why can't we let people be free to choose how they live their lives? They make those decisions. right? They answer, they pay the whatever consequences they are. It's their consequence to deal with. Let them, as long as it's not impacting you.
And between them and their maker, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we have no position there. We have no
Right.
even role in that
Right.
conversation. It's between them and their maker. And you make a good point, unless it's impacting you. So we
Yeah.
did have some conversation this week around your rights end where somebody else's rights begin, right? How do
Right.
you figure that out? And the arbitration thereof doesn't have to be the government putting a law in place before we ever encounter this, or saying like, oh, if it comes up again, here's the law just in case, right? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Except that it's always about individuals and how I behave and how you behave. And
Yeah.
there's no standard answer that's going to be right for every circumstance.
Right.
All right, cool. Number two.
The Ten Commandments
include not killing and not stealing, which sounds an awful lot like the non-aggression principle.
I mean, it basically is, right? Like,
well, would you consider adultery to be in the same thing, right? Like taking people's stuff? That too sort of feels.
I mean, maybe. No,
I don't know. Like
humans aren't property, so I mean, probably not. But morally, I think.
Committed are we to the 10 Commandments?
Yeah.
Or are they a law from a previous era written under a previous society that, while it bears some relevance, doesn't necessarily conform to more of a modern sensibility?
I definitely feel like not killing and not stealing probably definitely translate, though. I think those fall under love your neighbor, which is the new commandment, right? So I feel like those two things align. I feel like it translates.
Some of these others, though, like the honor thy mother and thy father, right? Like, what if your parents are total jerks, right? Like, we know people who have grown up under just terrible circumstances because their parents are terrible people. And, you know, how much honor is due those people who aren't honorable people, right? So
maybe we should do an episode about the 10 Commandments sometime. That might be a good
we could do 10 of them.
We could focus on one at a time.
We could take them apart one at a time.
We could. We'll let the audience decide. They can tell us if they want that.
Feels perilous. All right. Number 3, there are numerous accounts of Jesus healing the sick and feeding the poor without mandate, support, or even permission from the government. He had no permit for that. What was he doing? Making
how dare he
fishes and loaves?
I mean, how dare he do such a horrible thing as healing the sick?
Think about this as a sense of I was like, you don't have a permit to do that. It's charity, right? It's charity, it's love, it's compassion. And when we think about these other things where people are starting a business because they're solving a problem, I'm building a business because I'm solving a problem. I see that there aren't enough barbers in my area. I see that there aren't enough nail technicians in my area. I see that somebody needs to be trained on something. And so I'm going to provide that training, right? Whatever business I decide to begin, I'm beginning it because I think that there's a problem that needs to be solved. Is that is like entrepreneurship, not an act of service to your customers, right?
Yeah. You're using the resources you have available to you to solve a problem.
So serve a greater good. That if we can remove the barriers to that kind of public good, right? Like where I'm out there doing the thing. And then to think about like, if I'm not solving a problem, if I'm not able to convince people that my solution is the right solution or a better solution, then they're not going to buy my product. And then I'm going to go out of business anyway. So, you know, so here's a comment from Facebook, sharing your gifts. Exactly. That's all entrepreneurship is, right? It's putting your gifts out into the world and then assuming that people need those gifts and that because they do, they will part with their money for it.
And even not even entrepreneurship, but charity, right? I mean, both of those things.
Yeah. So. And service to your community, to be a participant in your community. Yeah, I agree with that too. So if we look at this idea of Jesus healing the sick and feeding the poor, he wasn't mandated to do it. He wasn't supported by the government to do it. And he didn't have to ask for permission to do it. That to me all sounds very entrepreneurial. Had he been paid for it, perhaps. But you got to think, like, part of that was him spreading his message, right? Which was that God is a forgiving God. God treats us like he cares about us, and we're his family, and he loves us, we're his creation, and that message needed to be shared. And so part of the way he was able to share that message was by demonstrating that care for other people. So it is kind of entrepreneurial for him to be like, hey, I'll feed you, come hear me speak. And oh, by the way, food comes at the end.
Yeah.
Listen to the whole conversation and then you can eat afterwards. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I
Come
don't know when they
come for
serve the food.
preaching, stay for lunch.
I don't know when they serve the lunch. All right, go for it. Number 4.
Number 4, he turned water into wine, making him quite possibly the most notorious bootlegger ever. That's a joke, guys. Please don't burn me. The steak.
Right.
Please.
No, our teetotaler Christians that I'm sure have long since given up on our podcast.
They were like,
like boozy moms on
we
Thursday
can't
night
do
on
this.
YouTube. No,
These
thanks.
chicks are too much.
But there's a Bible study that I know of in Spartanburg that meets at the brewery, and it's called "What Would Jesus Brew?" And I think the idea behind this Bible study is, number one, to get together and fellowship. It's an affinity group. Everybody's interested in breweries and beer and like ales and trying new beers and stuff like that. And so the idea behind it is like, okay, we all have that in common. Now let's bring in this Jesus conversation and have that in common too. And so that's not unusual in terms of marketing, is to bring those affinities together. We're here on Parenting Porcupines because we're both moms, and Melissa too, when she's with us, we're moms. And so we take that parenting piece and then the libertarian piece and we bring those together. That's like in a lot of different ways that affinity marketing piece, right? Let's combine these things we have in common. So if we talk about Jesus as the original libertarian, the OG libertarian, if we think about Jesus as the original libertarian, what does Jesus have to say about, I'm not going to say the roads because that's ridiculous, but about building community, about what your obligation is to other people? I mean, aside from love thy neighbor, right? Like what are some examples, or what do we think of when we think of Jesus and community and how he builds a community?
Well, I mean, look no further than his disciples, right? I mean, he traveled across the land collecting men, and putting together this group of men and women, because there were women in this group. But putting together this group of people, very different people from very different backgrounds. And, and not only bringing them together and encouraging them to spread the word, but encouraging them to accept people even when they didn't want to. I mean, this is a Jesus who, dined with tax collectors. This is the Jesus who washed the feet of a prostitute. I mean, this is the Jesus who lived a message of love. And I think that, when you look at the group of disciples who followed him, his crew, I think that is a really wonderful example of how he was able to build a community, the example of a community, and, to be able to share a message, a very important message that he had to share.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think if we consider libertarians while being for things like personal responsibility and individual rights, and yet wanting to take on the responsibility of caring for our neighbors and caring for our community, in that a political party is meant to do that, right? It's meant to elect candidates and run this government that we all share together. That compassion piece, that coming at this from a love perspective piece, is really important. And it would behoove the libertarians in our party to remember that it's about inclusivity. It's about love and forgiveness and charity and compassion. And that's really where all of this liberty stuff comes from. How can you trust others to make really good choices if you don't love them as much as you would love yourself? And if you're fighting for your own liberty, it's because you want liberty for others. So big deal, big message. It's Easter weekend.
It is. It's exciting.
Does your family have plans? Are you guys, you have church and egg hunts and chocolate bunnies and the whole 9 yards?
Lots of Reese's peanut butter eggs, but only on Sunday because I'm trying to get in shape again. So now that my foot is all healed up.
You and I have 5 weeks till we get to the Libertarian National Convention and get to sport our gala dresses. So I'm with you. I went out and ran this morning, and it'll be a daily occurrence. So we'll get ourselves where we need to be.
It's exciting.
In the meantime, the show notes will go up on the blog shortly. I know you guys are missing them because I haven't posted them yet, but they'll be there soon. Go out to parentingporcupines.com. We'll be back next week. Melissa will be back with us next week. This was our Easter version of Libertarian Moms. It's always good to see you, Jessica.
Good to see you too.